hot wings, hot topics, and real estate. Host Ryan Spellerberg keeps it real with agents, investors, and insiders every month. No fluff, just good convo exploring the trends, challenges, and questions shaping today's market. Now, here's your host with over 20 years of lending experience, Ryan Spellerberg.
They're on fire. Hey everybody, Ryan Spellerberg, mortgage guy with Central Bank. Another episode of Hot Topics where we talk about the hot topics in real estate. We bring in professionals to talk about what you need to know, and we've got an awesome episode today with Lindsay Harris, Harris Law & Co. Why bring an attorney in to talk about real estate? Well, they're a huge part of real estate. So Lindsay, you've seen the show before. She's great with spice, so she's going to crush me on this thing, but tell everybody about yourself.
Lindsay Harris. I own Harris Law & Co. in town, so I've been in the estate and business planning world for not quite 15 years. I won't age myself that much, but I'm getting up there. I work with small businesses, everyday families, help a lot of real estate investors get started forming their entities and getting it set up on the succession planning side to protect their families. And really, I just love what I do. I get to come to work every day and figure out how to make things work for people.
Got it. Well, let's hop into the wings. Again, you are a spice person, so the first 3, 4 are pretty easy for you. So I'll hop into the first one. But while I'm doing that, what made you want to get into law and specifically estate planning? Well,
my story's a little different. I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer when I was a kid. Never really knew why. Didn't know a lawyer, wasn't raised by lawyers. So everyone always kind of scratched their heads, other than I like to talk a lot and pretty quickly. And then I lost my father my senior year of high school. So my world kind of really shifted, and I saw really what happened to a family when you don't have good planning put into place. I was 38 years old, so a pretty young guy. Just something really unexpected. And I always thought, gosh, there's got to be a better way. So that really motivated me all through law school to work for everyday people and making their lives easier, and gave me a really good passion for what I do.
Got it. I've never heard that story, but you have a wing to eat.
Oh.
That's it's kind of interesting what makes people get into what they do, and having a backstory like that is super helpful to understand. So thanks to Aaron from Atomic Wings. They sponsor us. We've got 6 great wings here. That we start out with medium buffalo. Next one is Nashville, which is a great dry rub. You're going to love it. But before that, so for someone who has bought a home or is looking to buy multiple properties, why does somebody need to talk to a Lindsay Harris?
So getting your home properly structured from the offset is really important, especially nowadays with privacy. So a lot of times people will go kind of try to do it themselves. They put their personal address online. They're setting up entities online without the right indemnification provisions and not really understanding how it flows. I can fix some stuff behind the scenes, but the best time is if I can get in at the front end and set up the right structure. So when you're talking about owning multiple properties and you want to look as least attractive to sue as possible, which is generally what we want, making sure we don't know who you are is one of those key guidelines. So when you're setting up your entity and even understanding how to set it up, there's a lot of different ways we do it. People look at series LLCs, which is kind of owning a waterfall of LLCs. And that's not always going to be the right fit, but even putting things in multiple entities, different types of trusts, really depends on what you own personally, what you own professionally, and how public you want to be about what you own. So it's really important to do that on the front side. Because even if I can amend something, I can't erase what's already on a website, right? Yep. Once it's online, it's online. I think a lot of famous people have learned that the hard way.
So like, you don't need to be a big investor to want to have protection.
No.
Your average homeowner that wants some privacy, they should still come see you.
Yep, and we do that. We work with, South Dakota is a great state, especially entity setup-wise. We work with people who buy properties all over the U.S., or even hop on over to Minnesota. We get a lot of lake cabins and things like that they want to stay in the family. And what people don't realize is if you're not putting that into some type of South Dakota entity, you're subjecting that to Minnesota and potentially probates over in Minnesota, just using that example. So wanting to stay out of the court system is also a really big motivation factor for a lot of people.
Yep.
So yeah, we help making sure everything stays in South Dakota, stays tax efficient, and stays private.
Got it. Well, this is Nashville, which is my favorite wing. Great flavor. Like, I'd eat that thing all day long. So next one comes up is Hot Buffalo. Still pretty easy going, especially for a spice lover like you. But so what's the number one mistake people make when it comes to their real estate from a legal standpoint?
Ooh, they don't understand who's on the deed versus who's on the mortgage. So when we have a death or a liability that comes up, a lot of times I'll ask people who owns their house, and I get an answer, and then I actually pull the information. And it's so easy to do. I mean, when you're buying property, if you don't know better, you don't look at the deed because the seller signs it. You get that big closing packet, you kind of scroll through it and you're like, hey, just fine. I got good people working for me, and yes, that helps, but you want to make sure you're actually looking at it, because when we see errors on that side of things, it's usually when someone's passed away or we've had a lawsuit. So that can be a really hard time to fix things because I've already lost who I need to sign the corrective deed.
Sure.
Or to say what actually happened here. Same thing with businesses. Big part of the business thing with my small business owners, when we're investing in real property, we might do some refinancing. And banks, you don't love keeping
We're the
things.
worst.
Yes,
We're the worst.
yes,
I get
horrible.
it. Yeah.
You don't love keeping it in the LLC or in the trust, so they take it out to do the financing with the theory that it's going to go right back in. Well, that deed to put it back in gets forgotten. And when we realize it is when there's been a death or there's been a lawsuit or a liability of some kind, and then we have an insurance issue. I don't have the deed properly put in there. So
yeah,
that can be a big one. So making sure you always understand who's on the title. And if you take it out for financing, please put it back in.
Yeah. And while you're having your wing, maybe I can explain a little bit more. But when you come to do a traditional 30-year fixed rate mortgage, it has to be in your personal name. You might have an LLC that you have it in from a protection standpoint, but I can't lend if the ownership is the LLC. So you move it into your personal name, and then most of the time, hopefully, they move it back in afterwards. Mm-hmm. But that might be the issue, is what happens if they forget to do it.
Yep. You're not working with great bankers like you, Ryan.
The worst.
I know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That one's pretty delicious. The chicken also very delicious.
I know. These are great wings. They do a great job. Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm a new investor. I'm buying my first property. Should I automatically put my property into an LLC? I get that
coming from a
question.
business attorney, I would say absolutely.
Okay.
There's really not a downside because you can always change your mind. So you're in one of the most tax flexible entity structures, being that you can have partners down the road. You can file an S election down the road to be taxed more tax efficiently. If you have a partner, you can do a partnership. You can have a sole proprietorship. So on the tax side, gives you more options than you would have just keeping it in your own name.
Sure.
On the liability side, again, no brainer on that side. You might as well protect it. There's no sense in risking your personal assets, your spouse's assets. Set it aside, make sure you're properly structured. Keep things separate. Also helps on the bookkeeping side. A lot of people, when they get into real estate, it's really easy to just start throwing money. Well, if you're not actually tracking it in the right bucket, you don't realize how much you're spending personally because you're not separating your finances.
Sure. Yeah.
So even for a lot of people, it helps with that first property to say, this is how much this is actually costing us. Because until they have multiple, they may not have that CPA on board yet. They're not really working with their attorney on a daily basis by any means.
Yeah.
They don't need to. They just need to make sure they're set up right.
Right. And again, from the financing standpoint, you can't close in the LLC unless you're going to do a commercial loan.
Yep.
A lot of the times you'll close in a personal name, and then afterwards you'll quit claim deed it in. Mm-hmm. I get the question if it's allowed all the time. The biggest thing is making sure that the ownership on the LLC matches the ownership of the people buying the property. So husband and wife buying it, husband and wife own LLC, instead of husband and wife buy it and then they bring in 7 other partners on the LLC, because you've changed the ownership then. So you have to be careful with that.
Yes, absolutely. And the due on transfer clauses are real clauses.
Yep.
So some people are like, well, I can just do this deed after we close. Like, so you really can't, because that due on transfer clause is applicable. So if it's not the same owners, we have issues.
Yep.
So it's like we have to go back to the bank if we're going to do something like that. And a good business attorney, they're going to know that. They're going to help guide. They're going to pull that. They're going to want to know who's on the mortgage. They're going to ask who you're banking with. If we're going to do something creative, we absolutely can, but we have to go back to the bank first.
Right.
So we're really partners in that side of
Correct.
things.
That next one is habanero. Good, just base flavor. It's a little sweeter. You'll love it.
I like a good habanero.
Yep. So is it true that you recently broke your wrist saving a puppy? or is there an amazing story?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Okay. Just give it a sec. Give it a sec.
Mm. Yeah, I've been told to come up with a very creative story on how I broke my wrist. So I like to do a lot of things myself, although I tell people DIY is a horrible idea in my field.
Right.
So
yeah.
saving puppies every day. Yep, that's definitely a thing I do.
Well, we'll move on to a real question. How about that? So give us 1 or 2 good examples of things that you've seen where people don't plan correctly and the problems that come from it.
Ooh, like real estate focus.
Real estate focused. Yep.
I've already gone over the deed one. That's a big one. The other big misconception people can have is, losing a loved one. I mean, it's hard, and then people don't want to talk about it or think about it. But a lot of times a surviving spouse might think they have to refinance their house right away, and they don't realize that there's an act under the law, and I won't get into the nitty-gritty today, but you don't always have to go through the refinancing stage. Even if your name's not on the house as a surviving spouse, you can essentially assume the mortgage. So most banks have an assumption process, so you just have to figure out what that looks like. For some, it can be as easy as giving them a copy of the death certificate and just letting them know, and you keep the same terms. For others, it can look more like a refinance. Biggest part is keep paying the mortgage.
Right.
Some people think you can just stop paying because it's not in their name and they'll figure it out later. You need to keep up those payments to give yourself that flexibility and those options. So,
And most of the time, the bank doesn't care as long as the payments
Yeah.
continue to be made.
and that's what I tell everyone. The bank loves getting paid. So as long as you're paying them, they're going to figure it
Right.
out. And where that gets tricky is a lot of times if a mortgage is only in one spouse's name, it's either they met later in life. That's a common one.
Yep.
So they're not sure if some of that value should go to their kids because they haven't done any planning. You get some of that kind of brought in. And they're also not sure if they qualify. So sometimes that's when we see something in one spouse's name is because
Sure.
the other spouse maybe had, a financial hiccup in the past and they're worried they're not going to qualify. So they try to keep everything secret. And in reality, they're protected. Just keep paying.
Right.
So that's one of the things that I see come up a little bit. We've had a little bit more of that recently. And I think it gets pushed because people talk about refis. They know what a refi is.
Yep.
But it's just not always the right answer.
And typically, you're not going to want to refi unless, sorry, this
Oh,
is
no.
Atomic.
I don't know. I went ahead. I jumped ahead on you.
You need to hop into the Atomic. It's got a really good base to it. This will be something where it's probably closer to your normal level of heat on your breakfast cereal.
But so far, I got a slight tingle
Yeah,
going.
right.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Tingling sensation, sparkling water, it's all
Yeah.
good.
But like most people don't want to refi unless you're doing it for a rate reason or you're getting a divorce, things like that. But just to refi doesn't make sense. You might be able to assume that loan, so don't jump into it before you have to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
okay, once you're done with that, we're
I
gonna
get through the whole thing, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's delicious.
It's
so
good. I know.
Now it's finally bringing that heat.
Yeah. If you cough with this stuff, it's problematic. So try not to cough. So, last big question for you before you get into your last wing, but farmers and land can be one of the most difficult things to work with. But why does it seem like putting off planning is just normal for farmers? If they plan, are they going to die? That's the feeling I get because I grew up farming and that's the way it was in my family. We don't want to talk about it. Why? Why does that happen so often?
Well, I love working with farmers. I grew up between Harrisburg and Canton, South Dakota, so a lot of farmland. I have a huge farm base. I think a lot of it with farmers is we also just don't want to get out of the tractor. Like as soon as we start planning, we start thinking of not farming. We love farming. Want to stay out there. The other thing is we don't always know how to divide our land. Fair is not always equal. Equal isn't always fair. So that sweat equity, especially if you have a farming family member, is going to be part of it. Ooh, my eyes started going.
Yep. Yep, you got the last
Yeah.
one to go, yeah.
Oh, that one's exciting to me.
It's good, though. It's good.
So I think we see a lot of hesitation with the farming families because of that. They think they have to have the answer before they go in and do planning. When if they're working with a skilled estate planner, we're going to help provide those answers. We're going to give them options they didn't
Right.
realize they had.
Right.
And that really opens up the planning. But if they think they have to go in and be like, well, this is exactly how I'm doing it, well, that's really intimidating.
I told you not to cough.
Yep. Right to the back of the throat.
Yep, and you're not even on the last one yet. That's
Oh,
where it
that's
gets
fine.
a little bit more aggressive.
This one actually wasn't even that bad. I love the heat, but I always laugh because I can't prevent the reaction.
Yeah,
So-
you're a little red in the face, which is
Uh-huh.
fun. Yeah.
Yep.
Why don't you give that last one a try?
I need a little sip of water.
Mm-hmm. And on the farming standpoint, so I'll let you get in your wing, but so if I inherit farmland with 3 brothers or sisters and I want to sell and the others don't, what most people don't understand is that one person can force a sale on land.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't plan well, you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You could risk that whole farm.
Yeah, and that's partition actions. So the law favors the transfer of land. So every law is kind of designed to push land out to other people, to more people, to different people.
Sure.
So that's where you really see those actions come into play, and it shifts the power dynamics. 'Cause then you have your child, 1 or 2 children who are more tied to the farm, who think, well, we're gonna outvote them. In reality, it's just the one.
Yep.
So that can create huge issues in farming families. And really, a lot of it is just there's not transparency. A farming child might have one assumption versus their siblings, and the value of land has shifted dramatically. So you're not talking anymore about a few $100s an acre.
Right.
You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars sometimes,
Yeah.
So farms where people say, well, I got it for 100,000 are now worth millions of dollars.
Right.
That changes between siblings being able to get along.
Yeah. Family's family until money comes into play.
Yeah.
This is going to be our first guest actually that's crying. So that's
it's
fun.
It's not crying. It's like tears. I don't want to touch
Tears
my
of love.
face.
Tears of love.
Tears of joy.
Okay.
Yes,
Good.
this hot sauce is amazing.
Well, before we let you go, so how do people get in touch with you? How do they contact you to start the process?
Yes, we have a quick book a call on our website. So if you go to harrislawco.com, you can click a book a call. You'll visit with my estate planning coordinator or my business coordinator. They'll kind of go over our beginning process, get you booked for a time to meet with me. That initial meeting is just a sit down. I want to learn a little bit more about you, about what you need. No cost for it because I want to make sure we're both a good fit to work together.
Yeah.
And then we get you on the calendar and get you booked.
Yeah. We've used Lindsay personally. She does a fantastic job. She's helped us. So I highly recommend giving her a call if you have any real estate needs. If you own a house, you should have already talked to Lindsay or her team. So, well, thanks for coming. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share it, have some fun. And again, thanks for our sponsor, Atomic Wings. Thanks, Lindsay, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
She's going to finish that one on her own.
I absolutely am.
Yeah.
This is great.
All right. Thanks, guys.